Welcome back to Word Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. But right now, XL Energy Center
Game 3 is Friday night.
Yeah,
I got to start putting this in my calendar.
Yeah, so we're thinking game 1 is Sunday, game 2 is Tuesday, and then 2 off days because the XL Energy Center is booked on Thursday night, I believe. I haven't double-checked this, but this is what I was told. That means that game 3 would be Friday. It'll either be 2-0 for one of the teams or 1-1. That's what my elementary school math tells me. Anthony, I'll be honest. I was excited that the Wild made the playoffs, but part of me was hoping that 22 seconds later, you would be in panic-stricken mode, that you have been completely wrong about this team for the last several. Now you're going to act like, oh, you see, I told you there was nothing to worry about when they were 22 seconds away from pretty much catastrophe. Let's be honest, that right now we would be sitting here in a totally different complexion because Thursday the Wild could conceivably be practicing, not knowing if their season's over, and then we'd be waiting out a Calgary-LA game with LA having nothing to play for and wondering if the Wild just absolutely crumbled.
It could have been.
But it wasn't.
And it isn't. And it's... The race got close. There's no question about it. But I will say that the first time that I thought that there was a chance that the Wild were not going to advance was with 1:15 left in the game when they called timeout with the extra attacker.
Now, at that dawns on you.
At that time, Calgary was down 3-1, so I thought they're probably going to get in anyway. But that was the first moment in the game last night that I thought, all of the game, I had this feeling they were somehow, some way, they're going to tie this game. But to look at the picture, the big picture, throughout this, and you will attest to this because I've never wavered, I've thought all along the Wild were going to make the playoffs. And a part of the reason, which I've voiced several times on this show, is what would have had to happen for them to miss was, number one, they would have had to have some kind of an epic collapse. Number two teams out of the bunch that were chasing them would have had to have been almost perfect. Now, one of the teams was almost perfect. The Blues won 12 in a row. The Wild won one time in a 7-game stretch. Calgary went like 9-2-2 over 13 games. That's pretty close to perfect. And yet, even though all of that stuff happened, the Wild still held them off. They never, even for a moment, were knocked outside of the playoff picture. They were passed by St. Louis for a day when they fell to the second wild card. But that was why I was as confident as I was, just because it would have taken something absolutely astronomically long shot for it to happen.
But if you think about what happened in the last 2 Wild games with Vancouver and it was not only that, Vancouver and the last game of the season against Anaheim, but also the Anaheim game where they rallied with 3 minutes left from 3-1 down to beat Calgary. It really, none of those things happened. Holy mackerel.
But there were also a million things that happened the other way. Yeah. The Blues win 12 in a row. I mean, you could play great hockey and go 10-2 or 9-2-1. Calgary rips off 9 wins, and they went 9-2-3, I think it was, over a 14-game stretch. And the Wild on the other side win one time in 7 games, where they went 1-4-2, lost a couple overtime games in New Jersey or New York. I mean, there was almost everything that could go wrong or could go as the confluence, the coincidence of things happening was close. And yet, with all of that happening, they still finished ahead of these teams. And
isn't it amazing, though, like when you think about like the comeback January 7th against St. Louis where Fleury comes in is unbelievable. That last point that Foligno to Boldy in New Jersey, what happened the other night, like every point was needed. Isn't that crazy in an 82-game season?
Well, it is. But you know what? Actually, I was talking to Margot about this morning. One of the moments that has stood out to me the most during this last couple of weeks was the morning press conference that we listened to in Calgary. Were you in the room when Huska spoke that morning before the?
Yeah.
Well, so did you hear his answer?
Yep.
When somebody asked him how important it was for his young team to play in a game that had that kind of magnitude. So this was the morning skate before the Wild played the Flames that night.
He's an impressive guy.
Very impressive. And his answer, I thought, was brilliant. He said, you know what the lesson I hope my guys learn is that every single game matters just as much as the next.
Right.
And the games in October and November mean just as much as tonight. And he said, you look at the team in the other room, they're 5 points ahead of us. because they banked more points in October and November. Yes, tonight's a big game, but so was game 3. So was game 10. So was game 20.
Yeah.
That's the lesson that I hope my guys learn. And that's why when you look at this Wild club, look at the big picture, and even I'd say, I've had a few people, though, the Wild are backing into they won 4 out of their last 5. They're not backing into the playoffs. They won 4 out of 5 and had played some pretty good hockey over that
backing
stretch
into the playoffs was the year of Torch when you and I got into the backing the playoffs debate, and they lost 5 in a row going into remember that?
Right. Yes. Yeah. But my point has always been you play 82 games and over 82 games, the Wild have 97 points. You don't back into the playoffs with 97 points. And you have to earn it, and you have to earn your way in, and all those points early in the season matter. And when you then throw on top of it that this team played less than 30 games with Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek in the lineup together, they had a myriad of other injuries and yet still piled up 97 points. And so the last point I'll make on this topic was going into the game against the Ducks. I know you're not a big golf fan, but did you listen to any of the post-game stuff from Rory McIlroy after he won the Masters? Yeah. So he was talking about his caddy. He was asked about his caddy, and his caddy's gotten a lot of grief about, is he holding Rory back? Is he not provide Rory the same support these other guys do? And somebody asked him what the most important thing his caddy had done or said that weekend. And Rory, so for those who weren't watching, I can't imagine how you haven't seen it, but he misses the putt on 18 that could have won the Masters and now has to regroup and win in a playoff. And he said he got in the cart with his caddy to ride back to the 18th tee for the playoff hole. And his caddy turned to him and said, if I had offered you Monday to be in a playoff to win the Masters, would you have taken it? Mm-hmm. And he said, absolutely. And he said, it reset my mind. Like, forget about how I got to this point. I'm in a playoff to win the Masters.
Right.
And so that's, as the Wild were getting ready to play the Ducks, that's what I threw out to our broadcast team. And I said, think about it that way. If you had said back in October, I'll give you home ice against the Ducks, winning in, would you take it on the final night? Almost everybody takes it. And how the fact that they started fast and had a little dip in the middle and then had to win 4 out of 5 down the stretch to get to wrap it up. Just go out tonight and win a game in front of your home fans against a Ducks team that you're better than, and you're in the playoffs and you're the top wild card team. And to the Wild's credit, they did it. And now, yes, they waited till the final 20 seconds, and that just seems typical for the way this season has gone for this team. But it also speaks volumes, I think, to the way this team is built. And I know that there's been some games late where their effort on Long Island, I thought, was really disappointing. I wasn't as hard on them in the effort in Calgary because I thought Calgary played great. Minnesota didn't play hard enough, and they weren't good enough that night. That was what
concerned me about that game, is that they didn't seem to want to get into the fight.
Right. Calgary, but Calgary was terrific that night. But all I would say about that is that it brought some questions like, how do you not have your best that night? And it's a legit question. I don't know how you show up for that game and you aren't battling tooth and nail with those guys. But this team has come from behind so many times this season. They've won 7 times when they were down by 2 goals. They've continued to fight in games like that game where they have this never say die attitude about them that I think is a trait that can't be overlooked. And in that game, how about the pass Matt Boldy? There's no panic. The puck's on his stick. He doesn't just hammer it into the pads of the goalie. Yeah. He makes a soft, accurate pass through the crease to get it to Eriksson Ek, who scores from 1.4 inches away. I just think it was so typical of the way this team has played throughout the season.
Perfect ending. It would have been a little more perfect to come here with a smile on my face today, though, and just throw it in your face. But anyway, let's talk. Let me talk for a second.
I have just one other comment to make about that. So you would have taken pride in me being wrong because of the fact that I said all along they weren't going to make it, when in reality, you also thought they were going to make it.
Yeah, but
you were just less certain than me.
Yeah.
So that way it was like if they didn't make it, you were going to be able to say, I told you so, even though you also thought they were going to make it.
Yeah, but I was more right. All right.
Well, I was more right.
Let's talk about the ending of the game. I mean, perfection. Like honestly, as much as the energy in that building had to be beyond nervous throughout that third period, what a perfect way to end Marc-Andre Fleury's career. And it just, I mean, everything about it turned out to be one of the biggest, best moments in XL Energy Center in Wild history. To your point, Matt Zuccarello goes into a board battle and being undersized wins it on a one-touch pass to Boldy, right to Eriksson Ek for the goal. And then Gus has the wherewithal, the flair for the moment, the finger on the pulse to go to the bench and say, let's put Flower in, which you and I had been talking about, like, was an opportunity. If they were clinched, we thought that he was going to play the third period or the last 5 minutes, something to get him in the game. But then it's not clinched, so they got to start Gus anyway. Then the way the third period is, you're thinking there's no way we're going to see Flower. But then for Gus to remember and go to the bench and get Flower in there, then Ek takes a penalty 20 seconds into overtime. Gus is probably on the bench like, what did I just do to this poor guy? And then it turns out to be the best of Marc-Andre Fleury. Throws every trick that he's ever had in the game out there with two-pad stacks and gloveries and kissing the post and all that. And then to cap an unbelievable game by Marcus Johansson, your guy. Perfect pass to Boldy, and then Boldy gets his fourth career winning goal. It was a perfect way for this season to end in a season, as to your point, that they have just overcome injuries and deficits and everything to make just an incredible moment for this franchise going into the playoffs. Yeah,
and I referred to it as a storybook finish on the broadcast, and it isn't necessarily because of the fact that it was that they won a championship or anything, but it was all those things that you just mentioned.
That's why you love sports.
It is. And I thought Zuccarello was terrific all night, and he's come up so big in so many big games for this team this year, where it's been a time for a leader to lead, not just with words, but by example. And he's done that, and he did it again. Johansson was great all night long.
And has been for the most part a month.
Really has been. And so fitting that it's Boldy to Eriksson Ek, because Boldy his game has taken a huge step over the last couple weeks. And then for Gus to have his finger on the pulse, as you say, it's also makes you wonder sometimes, like, what's going on in Gus's brain during games. But yes, for him to come over, and when John Hines said, no, we hadn't talked about it, we hadn't thought about it, it was Gus's idea, you just couldn't make it up. He has the two-pad stack save. The puck hits the post, and it's so perfect for him, because the last time he had played at home, even though they won the game, he gave up 7 goals. And that's not how he should have been remembered in his last regular season game, maybe his last game in front of his home fans. So this was perfect for it to end that way. And I just think it's a team that all season has, to some degree, defied the odds. And I don't want to make it sound more dramatic than it is, but with the players they've been missing at times during this season, and the way they've had to adjust their game, and did it enough to finish up with 97 points, I think is amazing.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. There's so much to unpack with this team right now, but Eriksson Ek, just a true reminder of what they were missing in that Dallas series the last week and a half, since he came back in the lineup. He comes back, 4 goals, has the big game last night. I thought he was outstanding in Vancouver. And, to me, and I've said this before, and I was talking to somebody with the Wild today about it, and he completely agreed, is I really genuinely believe that the last 2 months, as much as it was a grind for this team to not have him in the lineup, it was a blessing in disguise for Eriksson Ek. And this person confirmed to me that he has dealt with an unbelievable amount of little tiny nagging injuries all year long that he's never been able to heal. And all of a sudden he misses 2 months. It sucks. Okay. But what it did is it not only got his leg better, but it all the other stuff he was dealing with, he absolutely rested up. And that was just enormous.
Well, I had the same conversation. I happened to stop by the Target Field today to see some of my Twins folks and hadn't talked to them. And Justin Morneau, who's a big hockey fan, I walked in to talk to him for a minute. And the first thing he said was commenting about last night's game. And then he said, might be the biggest blessing for those guys to now they're heading into the playoffs, and each have only got 40 games worth of wear and tear on their bodies. Mm-hmm. And so if they are 100%, up to speed 100%, and Eriksson Ek sure looks like he is. Kaprizov looks like he might still be a game or two away from And that's because of the standards Kaprizov has set. He still looks like a terrific player. He doesn't quite look like Kaprizov at his absolute best yet. But that might be the best thing that's ever happened to these guys, to head into the playoffs with those guys with only half a season of wear and tear on their bodies, essentially, not to mention the time when it happened, to be healthy going in. We've always talked about Eriksson Ek being the most irreplaceable player, and I think he's shown that in these 4 games since coming back.
Boldy, I did a huge story on him for The Athletic on Thursday, and it talks about his evolution. And, you and I have talked about, or mostly me, have talked about, like, you just wish that during this time without Kaprizov that he was stepping up more. Well, man, has he really done that? And I was talking to Marcus Foligno in the locker room last week, and he volunteered to me when I asked him, what's the biggest evolution you've seen with Matt Boldy this season? I was thinking on the ice. And he talked about his leadership, and he told a story about how in Long Island that night where they had that clunker, and we talked about how alarming it was that in the locker room, it wasn't just the Zuccarellos and the Bogosians and the Folignos and the Spurgeons that talked. All of a sudden, Boldy piped up. And what does Boldy do in Dallas? He has one of his best games of the season, and scores the big tying goal early in the third period, and then assists on Marco Rossi's overtime winner. Then in Vancouver, the next night against San Jose, next game, 4 assists on the 6 goals by Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek. Calgary, not so good. Nobody was good. Vancouver, I thought much better, didn't produce. But then last night, obviously gets the assist on the tying goal, then the winning goal in overtime. This is somebody that they are going to need to continue to do this in the playoffs, be the Robin to Kaprizov's Batman. Go to the dirty areas, like where we've seen him score goals here the last 2 or 3 weeks, Anthony. Like, he is going to those areas that Eriksson Ek goes and Marco Rossi goes, and those hard areas, and it's paying off for him.
Just been more physically assertive. And he's always been a guy that's won a lot of puck battles, but it's usually been because he's got a great stick, hand-eye coordination that's off the charts. And now he just seems to be realizing that he's capable of more.
Yes.
And I've loved his game for the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. And even though there have been a couple of games in which he didn't score, he's just looked different. It's felt different. And the shots on goal have been there all season, but for some reason they've just felt more dangerous here lately.
Totally agree with you. They're not as perimeter. I still don't love the 5 power play unit. Like, he just, like, I don't love him at the point, I guess is what I'm saying. At some point, probably in the playoffs, we're going to see Zeev. It's probably going to be when they're down in the series or they need a momentum shift or an injury. But that's one area where you wonder if he'll step in. But what do you think of the 5 forward power play?
It's looked great at times.
Yeah.
And the way they snap the puck around is impressive. It's going to be a different story because now if you look at the teams they've played down the stretch, Vancouver's penalty kill is actually one of the best. It was historically good for about a 2-month period. I think they finished 3rd in the league, but they had like a near 90% for over a 3-month span. So that's actually probably a good test. Some of the other penalty kills they've faced haven't been elite down the stretch. They had that power play looked terrific their first game together against San Jose. I think they're capable of, remember when they were at their best, I thought they were one of the best puck retrieval power plays in the league. They just seemed to, every time they'd take a shot, Eriksson Ek or Boldy was coming up with the puck in the corner, or Zuccarello. And we've seen more of that. So I like it in theory. Against Vegas's kill, it might be a little bit of a different story.
Although Vegas's kill has struggled at times.
It struggled a lot at times, but they also they've got a little bit different personnel on their penalty kill, where they're a little bit bigger, a little longer.
Yep.
The defenseman in particular.
Hayes, the Hannafins, the White Clouds.
It's a little bit different challenge, I think.
Petro.
So the challenge is more to get inside against them rather than some of the quick puck movement. But what I like about the 5 forwards is when they get it going, they move the puck so quickly that they don't allow a penalty kill to recover. And it's something that I've felt at times the Wild power plays lacked over the years.
It will be interesting with Eichel coming back into the lineup. And, their one big thing is that Eichel with William Karlsson on the PK is usually elite, but William missed so much time this year that you just wonder if that's what has affected their penalty kill. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about Matt Zuccarello. I want to talk to you about the Trenyan stuff in Vancouver. So many more things. And then obviously we'll break down the Vegas Minnesota series. We'll be right back on Worst Seats in the House. The weather is warming up, and that means it's time to put your augers away and it's time to grab the boat. Let Onyx Fish help you find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your success. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. Onyx Fish also shows you hotspots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game. If you're looking for a refreshing THC drink, well, check out Giggly. It tastes like your favorite cocktail with no aftertaste and just pure, bold flavor. It's made with real fruit juice and all natural ingredients. It's a Minnesota-made gem. You can find it at liquor stores and Quick Trip locations across Minnesota or get it shipped nationwide. Plus, with a new low pricing and low-calorie options, it's the perfect guilt-free sip. Try Giggly today. Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from LaPanta's home 2 days before we go to Vegas, which I'm extremely excited about. So the other night in Calgary, Matt Zuccarello, after a lot of the losses lately, we've been requesting him. And the way it works in the NHL, it's not like the old days where you would just walk into the locker room and you'd have a locker room full of players and you can just go from player to player and you get in one-on-ones and things like that. The way it works now is you pretty much request 4 or 5 guys, it's put on the board. Those players wait for you in the locker room or come out at some point, and we all get them together. Sarah McClellan, the Star Tribune writer, and I decided, let's do this. Let's give Matt a day off because we got him in New York, and we just gotten him a lot lately. So we didn't request him. So we go into this empty locker room after a long player meeting, and the only one in there is Matt Zuccarello. He's standing in front of the board and he just waves me over, essentially, like I'm talking. And he wanted to be the guy that would talk about the game, be sort of a spokesman. Him and Foligno came out also as well. And then about 15, 20 minutes later, after we get the rest of the guys and we get John Hines, I happen to run into Zuccarello as he's going to the bus with Johansson. He's limping badly, and I thanked him for coming out when he didn't need to. And he just goes, we'll be in a better mood tomorrow. And then what happens next night? Foligno gets the tying goal after talking the night before in Calgary, and Zuccarello gets the winning goal. And I just think it says so much about Matt Zuccarello. Zucchi doesn't like to do TV interviews, as anybody that watches FanDuel knows. He doesn't do a lot of them with Gorg. But he is like,
he doesn't like Gorg now that you think about it.
He the one thing about him is he doesn't like talking after wins. Like, he's actually told us, I'd rather talk to you after losses. Like, and we love it because he's so honest. Remember game 2 or 3 last year when he said to me, he goes, we defend like a junior team. I just thought it said everything about his leadership right now. And it just further epitomizes how big he is in this locker room.
Well, big in the locker room, but I made the point earlier and I'd make it again, is that he's a guy who has led by example. Mm-hmm. So it isn't just words with him. He does come out and talk mm-hmm. after things aren't good. And I know sometimes he's had a reputation for being a guy that can be a little bit sharp with the tongue when it comes to dealing with media members. But a lot of that is when the team is having success and when there's a time and a need for something to be said, he not only says it, but then he goes out and backs it up on the ice. And I think that's been one of the most amazing things about him this year, is that when everything else has been going haywire, mm-hmm. and even when some of the other star players have been on the sidelines injured, he's been the guy that is up in the face on the forecheck, that has been making big plays on the back check. He's been doing it with his play, not just his words.
And he still plays at such a high level given his age. And, frankly, if I'm Bill Guerin, I actually consider, saying to Kirill Kaprizov, hey, by the way, that with that extension, how about a 1-year extension for Zucchi and make sure he's here for 2 years and at least 1 year after you make sure that Kirill extends on July 1. Really, really quality game. Gustafson, comes up big really lately. I mean, you think about how leaky he might have been in Calgary, not a lot of great play in front of him. John Hines makes it extremely clear after the game that they're coming back with Gus, even though we know that was supposed to be Flowers' game. He had 5 of his buddies there. And then what happens is, the Wild defended great, that he wasn't tested a lot, but Gus had to be good in Vancouver, and he gets some big win and then does the same yesterday. They could not give up that third goal, and he made sure he didn't.
In both games, couldn't give up the third goal. And Vancouver, remember, the Wild gave up almost nothing. 22 shot attempts against through 2 periods and held Vancouver to literally no scoring chances for most of the third. And it was indicative of a team that knew, all right, this is how we have to play the game to win. But they were still down 2-0, and Gus had to make a couple big saves late in the second period to keep it at 2-0. And then the same in the Ducks game. Once the Ducks had scored to go up 2-1, the Wild certainly had the better of the play, but there were a couple little spurts where the Ducks had chances. He made one pad save while sliding to his right on a redirect that was one of the better saves that he's made maybe all year.
Yeah.
And it came when it was 2-1, that if the Ducks score again, that game's probably over at 3-1.
Yeah, and what a beautiful moment there in overtime with Flower at the end. And as we mentioned, the greatest hits early and all that stuff. Buium, you and I have been saying for a month on the podcast, month and a half probably, and judging by the reaction of fans, either they don't listen to the show or don't read anything I've been writing, because I've been writing it. Probably 4 straight insiders were giving people a heads up. Do not expect him to play if they are healthy. And then
if they have to win the game.
Right. And if they have to win the game. And by the way, to me, if they have to win the game and that you're not using him, it certainly means he's not playing game 1 of the playoffs, which is all we've been writing and saying for the last month and a half. Yet everybody seemed to be shocked that they were not pulling Johnny Merrill or Zach Bogosian, or that they had the audacity of playing Middleton and Spurgeon over Zeev Buium. And I'm a little blown away at the reaction when, this is a 19-year-old kid that had not really practiced with the full team yet, and it's a must-win game. And I don't know if people, have they not been paying attention?
Apparently not. I thought that I didn't even think there was a question that, and I've said from the beginning, I don't think we'll see him in the game 1 lineup. Wouldn't shock me at all if we saw him at some point during the playoff series.
Oh, yeah.
But there was 0 chance that if Spurgeon and Middleton were both able to play, there was 0 chance that he was going to be in that lineup. And I'd even argue that if one of those guys could have played, I bet Declan Chisholm would have played in front of him in that game against the Ducks. I just don't think you can take a
depending
guy,
on his health.
Right. I'm saying if they were only missing 1 defenseman, I don't think there's any way he plays. For sure, if they're missing 0. And this is a guy who doesn't know their system, hasn't had a practice, hasn't had a film session, hasn't had a walkthrough, anything. Now you get a chance to practice Thursday, to practice Friday. It's practice that's specific to Vegas, where it's going to be all about what Vegas does and how the Wild plan to attack it, counter it, defend it. You'll have those 2, plus you'll have all of the game plan meetings, the special teams meetings. I just thought there were so many reasons. So that's one, is that he wasn't up to speed on all that. Now you've got Middleton and Spurgeon coming back. It wouldn't have been out of the question if either one of those guys starts to play and all of a sudden doesn't feel quite right. It's their first game back for both of them. What if either one of them had to pull the chute at the end of the first period and say, I tried to go, but it just isn't right? Now you've got 5 defensemen, and one of them is a guy who's never played a game in the NHL. You couldn't take that kind of risk. We saw it happen in the Vancouver game. Declan Chisholm gets knocked out of the game. Spurgeon and Middleton are already not playing. Zach Bogosian takes a penalty. Yeah. We weren't going to use Cameron Crotty on the kill. They go shorthanded, and it's Faber and Brodin and John Merrill are your only 3 defensemen. And Faber and Brodin, they were going to kill the full 2 minutes if they had to. Now, Vancouver ended up scoring late in that power play, so we don't know. But you just were in a spot where you had so few options. You couldn't put yourself in that kind of a risky spot in a game that was a must-win. If it wasn't a must-win, there's no doubt he plays. If Denver had lost in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and he had been here for 2 weeks,
100%.
There's no chance that he hasn't played 2 or 3 games at this point.
Right.
But when it's one game, all or nothing elimination game. There is no way that you can throw that guy into that.
It's just beyond belief that right. is not realized by
not
the fan
fair
base.
to him.
Yeah.
Not fair to Buium, but also, can you look a veteran in the eye who's been through 81 games of the fight and say, you know what, we're going to throw this kid in and just see what we've got tonight? I mean, they don't know what they have. Yeah. What if he hits the ice? You've never seen him defend an NHL player before. What if he's just in a little over his head right now? Wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for a 19-year-old to struggle. Now, are you going to throw him in game one and say, try to defend Mark Stone in front of the net? Absolutely not. But maybe a couple games into the series when now think about practice Thursday, Friday. There'll be some times where it's, hey, go defend Kirill and Eriksson Ek in the corner. Let's see let's see how he responds.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also the fans are like, well, Montreal did it with Demidov and he had a goal and assist. You know what he also did? Lost them the entire game.
Lost them the game and got benched.
By absolutely like having no idea what to do defensively, lollygagging back on the one back check, and that's why Montreal at this juncture has not clinched a playoff spot
win
yet.
their final game.
So like let's actually watch the game.
And Demidov's a forward, not a defenseman.
100%.
It's a lot easier to throw a forward in there.
Same
than
thing
a
with
D-man.
Snuggerud. It's the same type of thing. Like
right.
you know, this is a 19-year-old
the first weekend.
Right.
So if the Blues were in last night's game, must win, and it was Snuggerud's first game, I'm not sure it's a no-brainer that he's playing.
Right. You know, and Snuggerud really got in also the whole Dylan Holloway thing and all that stuff. But like, and the other thing, I get he played 51 minutes in the NCAA semifinal, but you know what? If the Wild were watching that game, that's probably why he didn't play last night, because he also turned the puck over like a dozen times, including 3 times for shorthanded breakaways and 1 on the game-losing goal. So like, this is a kid that like he's 19. Just like if you have kids at home right now, think of throwing your 19-year-old into an NHL game for the first time in game 82 that you have to win to make the playoffs. Now, could you say it almost cost them? Like, we'll never know. But yeah, if they lost today, there's a ton of second guessing on a lot of fronts. But the reality is, like, I was blown away by the reaction of the fan base. Like, you know, when I kept on writing that last week, maybe play as NHLDU, maybe because we all thought that they were going to be clinched by them, but when they weren't, you know, and we had heard the day before that they essentially were calling, you know, I think Bill Guerin called his agent, told him, hey, we're not playing him. He totally understood. His parents didn't come for the game. So we had a pretty good indication he wasn't playing. We waited for final confirmation before tweeting it out because we knew what the reaction would be. But to me, I don't know. We'll see him. He's going to be here for 15 years. He just didn't get to play one regular season game.
Yeah. And
remember was it the Vegas series in 2021? Totally different. But remember the Wild had to throw Kalen Addison in for 2 or 3 games because Carson Soucy got hurt.
Right.
So like,
it's just a different deal.
Yeah. Like if there's injuries, he's going to be off the bench.
And the second guessers will always be there.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of sports fans, and sports fans are the reason we have jobs. So I love the fact that fans are passionate, but second guessing usually comes when you've failed. So let's say the Wild had lost last night. Today, there'd be a social media outpour about why they lost because they didn't play Buium. Well, is anybody saying today they won because they made the right decision on Buium? No, they're all just saying it was still a mistake. But how do you know? You only get one shot at it. And that's why those guys make their living. That's why those guys sweat it out. It's why Billy Guerin's sitting 7 booths to our left last night, quite literally living and dying with every rush. It's because it's his job to make the first guess. Part of his job.
You just
along with John
totally
Hines.
Contradicted your literally pet peeve.
What?
He wasn't quite literally
living
dying.
No, that's true.
Totally,
that's actually
totally
a valid statement.
Yep.
So he's 7 booths down to my left, living and dying with every rush.
Right, there you go.
And
proverbially,
but is literally the guy who makes the first guess.
Yeah.
And then all the fans get to make the second guess.
I should not say this because it was a private conversation, but you remember when I was really hammering the team about a month and a half ago, and I went down to the GM's meetings, and Billy and I sat down, and at one point we were talking about just the way that I was writing about the team and the negativity and all that stuff. And he goes, you know, and then I said to him, like, you just don't know what it's like to actually have to sit there and write about this slop. And he goes, dude, it's my job. This is literally my job. Like, yeah. I get it. Trust me. So it was kind of a funny moment, you know, where I told him that he didn't know what I was going through.
What you were going through. Well, we've said that all the time. I mean, nobody has any idea the kind of stress that a beat writer is under.
Yeah.
We've had
do you know what it's like to write about this shit?
Yeah, more than one occasion where some of the guys on the TV crew have been lectured by the beat writer on, you have no idea all the stuff I'm dealing with on a daily basis.
And you don't. So, all right. Trenyan, let's talk about that whole play. Oh my goodness.
Dangerous.
If that thing went the other way, holy crap. He almost cost him a major, but all right. So he gets challenged by Forbert. He drops the gloves. Then there's he's going down on his knees. His wires definitely crossed because he gets uppercutted, right. by
which
Forbert.
Was overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people talked about his punch. Yeah. Forbert's punch was late too.
Yep. And then he punched him on the ice, broke his orbital bone, stopped when the linesman broke it up. Obviously, he gets speared by Teddy Bluger from the bench, thankfully for the Wild, because the referee didn't ignore that. I kept on getting all these tweets from people like, how come nothing to Bluger? I'm like, dude, it got evened up because of Bluger. Right. Frankie Chiron, the referee there, absolutely saw it. Now, did he give Bluger a little bit of a leeway by not giving him something off the bench and turning into some major thing? No, but he gives him the 2 minutes to offset the other 2 minutes that Trenyan got. But what was weird is that they reviewed this second major that I don't even know if it was reviewable because they never even announced that they rescinded a major. And then they announced it as an instigator in the arena and put it on the game sheet as a 2-5-10, which is not a game misconduct. So you knew something got screwed up. And then after the game, we find out that he actually got an unsportsmanlike minor offset by Bluger's interference minor, which is interference from the bench, offsetting 5-minute majors with Forbert for fighting, and then gets the game misconduct for aggressor. But man, if the Wild had gotten another major there, holy hell.
Could have ended the season.
Yes.
It could have been, and it was a moment that Trenyan's got to be smarter. He has to know better. But let's go back to just how it was announced and written and everything. We were baffled by it on the broadcast because they didn't announce it at first. Then they put on the sheet that it was an instigator against Trenyan. And how in the world could you call that an instigator on Trenyan? Forbert skates over to him, challenges him, and they go. And I think it was and I know we talk a lot about officials managing games and how much it drives us crazy that they manage the game instead of call the game. In this case, Chiron was probably managing the game, and it was probably for the best. He knew he had to give Trenyan something extra for the late punch. When they go and watch it on the video, I don't know if they watched it and see Forbert, well, he punched him when he was on his knees too, so we could even it up that way. Maybe that's when they saw the Bluger spear from the. I don't really know, but the bottom line is, I think they were in a spot where they knew they had to get Trenyan out of the game just because the guy had his wires crossed. They knew Forbert was probably done for the game anyway. So we got to find a way to make it so that there's not a power play here. The season's on the line for these two teams. There's a lot going on. Let's just even it up. Excuse me. I don't know for sure that's what the discussion was, but it was kind of what it felt like. And when Chiron went over to explain it to Hines, you could almost see him say, like, hang on here. Let me explain this to you.
I think it was actually John A. Bear that went over to explain it.
Could have been, but it was...
Because I don't know, because you were on the air, I don't know if you saw it. So after they got done with the review at the Situation Room, Chiron and Aber had like a 1-minute conversation where Chiron and Aber were deciding exactly how we explain this to Hines.
Right.
And then Aber went over.
And, well, so one of them went each way. I guess I didn't pay attention to which guy went to each bench. But, you could almost sense that it was like hear me out and let me explain this to you. And the late punch by Trenyan was bad. There's no question. But it was interesting. Ryan Carter and I had a conversation about a week earlier about some of the fighting codes in the NHL. And we were talking about his line brawl with the Rangers when he was playing for the Devils. Mm-hmm. And he said, I learned a lesson that night that you never stop until the linesmen are in there, because I thought our fight was over because we had gone to the ice. And as I was standing back up, Stu Bickle popped him again. And he said, I learned my lesson that night that you never stop until the linesmen get in between you. And so if you watch that play over again, Trenyan's on his knees and Forbert throws a punch. Well, should Trenyan then have just assumed that, well, now when he's on the ground, I'm not going to punch him back? I mean, for sure, that was part of what got under Trenyan's skin. I loved his intensity. I loved his fire the whole night. But I'm sure, and we asked John Hines about it a little bit, and he hesitated before he answered, just to like, we love the intensity, but there are moments where you have to be able to control those emotions when your team is in a game like that one. If Vancouver gets a 5-minute power play right there, we might be talking about a Wild team that's on the outside looking in when the playoffs come around.
He reacted to that whole play like he read the Athletics' most disappointing player story that morning and found out that he was the Wilds guy, written by one of the two Athletic beat writers, not saying who, though. Last thing before we move on to our last segment and really kind of talk more about the Vegas-Minnesota series, and maybe Vinny has some thoughts too, I'm not sure. And we got some Twitter questions, is Brazeau. He's starting to play much better. As you said a couple podcasts ago, you guessed that he would start in the playoffs over Hinostroza. Totally agree with you now. Maybe as if the Wild ever want to go 11-7 to get Buium in the playoffs, you could always take out a Brazeau or a Trenyan. Who knows? Probably Brazeau. But do you like Brazeau's game more and more?
I do, and I like the identity of that fourth line. I think it'll depend on how the series goes, because I also think there are spots where Hinostroza helps you. And when Hines threw Hinostroza in there recently for Brazeau, I think a part of it was to give him some flexibility going the other way in the lineup, where let's say Johansson wasn't going that night or Nyquist wasn't going that night. He had a guy now in his lineup that he could throw up there to help spark one of those lines, especially if you're going to shorten the bench. Let's say you're trying to come from behind and you're only going to play 3 lines anyway. But I think going in, I like to have a fourth line with that kind of identity. Trenyan, Hartman, and Brazeau have been good. We saw it that night with Trenyan in the box. He went to a line where he threw Foligno with Brazeau and Hartman, and that came up with the tying goal. And in the Vancouver game, where it was Rossi and Nyquist that ended up being the odd men out down the stretch for Minnesota. So I think there's just some flexibility where you can create different combinations there. I think what'll be more interesting lineup related is it now would appear you'd have to start the playoffs with Eriksson Ek, with Boldy, and Kaprizov.
Right. And Brodin with Faber, not Middleton with Faber.
I agree. And Spurgeon with Middleton. But up front, I still think that this team's longest term chance for success is if those guys are split up. If Eriksson Ek and Boldy are maybe playing together, but Kaprizov's playing with Zuccarello and Rossi, or something like that. I think Rossi with Boldy and Foligno gives you just something. I think it gives you more balance. I think it's going to be difficult to win in the playoffs, especially on the road, if you load up that one line. But I
also think that if you look at that Gaudreau line with Johansson and Zuccarello, it's not the grittiest line. And like we just raved about how Johansson's been playing well, but sometimes in a game like Calgary, you do have to drag him into the fight. And I just wonder at some point if you have to take Zuccarello, put him back with Kaprizov, and to
do that, the most likely way to do it is to throw Rossi with them. Rossi's game hasn't been great down the stretch. He's had his moments, but he hasn't been as consistent over, say, the last 15 or 18 as he was early in the year. So I think long term, it's still a lineup that might give you more chance to succeed if you spread those guys out. But I don't know how going in right now you don't start with Eriksson Ek, Boldy, and Kaprizov with how good they've been. I mean, we talked about it a little bit after that Vancouver game. The way that Hines leaned on his 5 stars that night, Faber and Brodin were absolutely amazing. Faber plays 33 and a half minutes, a career high. Brodin, almost 33, 3209. The other guys were all up over 26. I mean, it was amazing how much he leaned on those guys and how good they were in the third period.
One thing about you, having faith that night that they were going to win is like in the second period when they lost Chisholm, and now your 5D without Middleton and Spurgeon is Crotty.
Basically playing 40.
Yeah, like, oh my Lord. I don't know how at that moment you were confident, but then they played a great second period.
Yeah, I thought the way they were playing, there was no way they weren't going to win. And I mentioned it earlier. They only gave up 22 shot attempts through 2 periods. It's the fewest they've given up in any first 40 minutes of a game all year. Almost 0 scoring chances for Vancouver. And they did get the power play goal, but it just felt like the way the Wild were playing, it was kind of like It was almost what I had a flashback to was the comment Mike Yeo made to me after Game 7 in Denver back in 2014 when they came from a goal down 4 times and then won it in overtime. And I remember asking him on the plane as we're getting on the plane, like what he thought and he said, you know what? We were playing so well. I just never had a doubt in my mind that we were going to find a way to tie that game.
Did you in the Colorado game?
Yeah. And he said, we were playing so well. And remember, that was the game they didn't give up. They gave up 1 shot on goal in the last like 15 minutes of play.
13.
And he just said, we were playing so well.
It was the only shot that Brizgalov had to take.
Right. And he said, I knew you couldn't play that well that long and not get rewarded. And that was kind of what I felt about the Wild that night in Vancouver.
Yeah, I want to talk to you more about Rossi in a bit. We'll be right back. Big news. The Aquarius Home Services in Connecticut Customer Appreciation and Open House event is happening Friday, May 2nd through Sunday, May 4th. It's not just big savings. It's call your friends, family, and their pets big. Save on heating and cooling systems, water heaters, generators, water treatment systems, and much more. There's food, prizes, and fun for everyone. Join them May 2nd through May 4th in Little Canada at 694 and 35E at Aquarius Home Services. And also go to AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
Boost your savings when you open a money market account at Royal Credit Union. For a limited time, you can get a $1,250 bonus when you bring $100,000 or more in new money to open a personal or business money market account. Royal's money market accounts have no monthly maintenance fee and tiered rates, so higher balances earn more. See details and open a money market account today at rcu.org/earn-more. Minimum deposit of $100,000 required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/24/25. Insured by NCUA.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Marco Rossi, before we get to Vinny's thoughts, this is a big playoff for him. Don't you agree? Like, I'm telling you, he hasn't played that well down the stretch. It's not a good sign in Vancouver when you feel, after a horrendous game in Calgary, that you feel you got to bench him when they shortened the bench because of what Trennian did. And, again, you listen to, Billy Guerin on Barrero the other day. I mean, he point blank said it. He goes, I don't like soft skill. And then he mentioned about 5-6 players on the team, like Boldy, not soft skill. Ek, not soft skill. Zuccarello, not soft skill. Like, who the one guy he didn't mention was Marco Rossi. And this is why Joe and I have been so adamant in the last year that he is not safe this summer to a trade. And I think this is going to make the final decision for Bill Guerin and the staff this offseason if they're willing to pony up the money that he's going to command as an RFA.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. This is a huge postseason for him. He has to produce in this postseason. And a lot of times you don't always just look at a player and say it's all about how much he scores. I think for Marco Rossi, it comes down to how much he scores in this playoff. He has to be a part of the offense in a big series against a big physical team. He has to prove that he can do it. He's been durable. He's played every game this year. You and I both know he's been fighting through things like so many guys in this roster have, and yet has never once tapped out, has never once said, I can't go. His game is still responsible. Even when his game is off, he just makes he makes 4 or 5 little plays a game, puck protection, decision type plays, where I'll think, you know what? Some of the other guys on this team would have tried to make that pass. He didn't. He knew it was low percentage, so he turned the other way. And I don't think that can be overlooked, and I don't think it is overlooked. But I do think that until he shows that he can do it when the stakes are the highest, it's going to hurt his value. And maybe it doesn't necessarily mean the Wild have to trade him, but it just means that it's probably, okay, it's going to be a short bridge deal, a prove-it deal. And
if I were Marco, I'd be interested in that.
I would too.
Yeah.
But if I was the team, I'd be interested in it. I just think it's the best with where he is in his career. I think it's a no-brainer for both sides.
They absolutely have a price point for him. If he was willing to take the bridge deal or the long-term deal that I think they'd be willing to give him, I'm not going to guess what it is. I think I said to you 5 times 5 is what I think they'd be willing to give him. I think they'd sign him, but on a long term, I don't think they'd go over Boldy. The question is, do you even go shorter? Like
if I were either side, I would jump at 5 by 5.
100%.
I think it's a good deal for the team.
100% on the Wild. Yep. I'm not saying,
I would if I were Marco Rossi too, just because I think right now you've shown that you have a chance to be a very good borderline star player in this league, but you haven't yet done it in the playoffs. You haven't yet done it down the stretch in a playoff race. But I'd look around this roster and say, be pretty exciting for the next 5 years to play with some of the to play with Matt Boldy,
and
to
look,
play with Kirill Kaprizov.
I get that I get that Joel Eriksson Ek signed his contract at a different time, but on a 5 times 5 deal, like that's pretty good to be right under Eriksson Ek. Like
no doubt.
Like Eriksson Ek is is freaking the man, and now it's like Bill Guerin should get a freaking medal for that contract. I was shocked when I found out that it was 8 times 5.1. And it was a different time. I get it. And 5 times 5 in today's day and age is undervalued for him. And he's got an agent that used to be part of he is going to be fighting for more. But to your point, at some point, Marco's the boss and he's got to, say something if he wants to be here. All right. Vinny's thoughts.
Well, he's got one that's kind of on the topic we were just discussing right now. And he says Dean's lack of adjustments throughout a playoff series, meaning Dean Evison, ended up biting him in the butt the last couple seasons in the playoffs. And what do you think, need to see out of Hines to think it's different? And I think it's an interesting question because I felt like I thought Dean adjusted too late in the St. Louis series 3 years ago. I thought he went to Cam Talbot too late in that series when he started with Marc-Andre Fleury. I thought that he didn't make any lineup adjustments early when they were up 2-1 and then lost game 4 in St. Louis. And it was Craig Berube who made the adjustment after game 3 when the Blues went down 2-1. He changed his lineup, changed his goaltender, changed his defensive pairings, and he changed the series. And it was, at the time, I remember thinking that's pretty aggressive because it's not an elimination game yet. But the reality is he did it before their backs were to the wall, and it gave his team a chance to get their footing, and they ended up winning 3 in a row to win the series 4-2. I didn't necessarily feel the same after the Dallas series because I wasn't sure that the Wild had the options there. They were beat up. Eriksson Ek was out. Hartman got injured early in the series. He didn't have a lot of bullets in the gun, so to speak.
Yeah, and they pretty much decided not to play Marco.
Right. But in the St. Louis series, I absolutely agree with Vinny's thought. I thought the adjustments. There were also
some things that happened in that Dallas series. Was like he was forced to play John Klingberg. Things like that. And let's be honest, John Klingberg turned that decisive game around.
He did. And also they decided to play Fleury in game 2 because Gus had won a double overtime game in game 1.
Yeah, I thought that was overthinking
I thought that was overthinking it.
And that was not a Bill Guerin decision. Like Dean Evison told me point blank that was his decision.
Yeah, and I think it was, I always thought at the time, and Dean he never said this to me, I always just felt it was kind of like they thought Gus's confidence could get shaken if he got beat. I think they felt they were probably likely to be overmatched in that game anyway. Hartman was out. Mm-hmm. Eriksson Ek was out. And I think it was just kind of let's just throw Fleury to the Wolves and then we'll get Gus back in game 3.
They did.
I felt like there was something to that. But the only thing I remember thinking at the time was you also can hurt the team's psyche if
Yeah,
all
like
of a sudden
they just saw this guy make 50-something saves,
Right.
and now you're not playing him.
and now you're not playing him. And what if you do get run over?
Yeah.
I mean, if you lost a game down there but you lost it 3-2 and you came home saying, well, we got a split and we were in both games. Now you come home having been run over in game 2. I thought that was, and this is not just a hindsight thing. It was something I thought at the time. But I do think Vinny's points are valid about the St. Louis series. And I think where Hines has had he's had a really good feel for who's going and who's not within games where he'll start to move lines around. And I'll be curious to see if he does the same thing in the playoffs. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. I think he's had a great knack for shuffling his lines going into games, but also within games and shortening his bench, double shifting Kaprizov and Boldy early in games, not just once you're down 2 in the third. So I think it'll be a different feel. And I think it's one of the things that has made John Hines a really good manager of this club.
All right, a couple Twitter questions.
You don't have any opinion on that?
No, I totally agree with you. But I also want to we only got like 10 minutes left in the show. I want to give the fans their due. But I do agree with you. Minnesota Wild aficionado with Isaac Howard potentially walking away from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Is there any possibility or potential route that Billy G could take to go after him? I do think that there's a chance, whether you try to trade for his rights or you wait till next August of 2026 to try to get him as a free agent. I think that the Wild would be interested in him just because of his, his chemistry with Stramel. But the other thing is maybe you try to trade for his rights. I think teams are probably calling Julian Breezeball right now. Dog asks, over under on how many Vegas fans Russo blocks the series, Anthony?
Well, I don't know. I have never really looked. How many people do you have blocked right now?
All right, let me look. Some I think are bots. I do get rid of the bots. Let's see. All right, I've muted. Oh, you know what? It doesn't tell you anymore, or at least it doesn't on my desktop. I think it does on your. I think it tells you how many you blocked and muted on the app, but not apparently on the desktop. So I can't tell you.
Well, you have your phone.
It's in the thousand. All right, you want me to look this up?
I do. If I'm going to make a guess, I have to know what I'm dealing with.
Guess.
Well, I
right.
mean, 3,000.
No, I think it's not that much. Sometimes I'm patient. All right.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. Where's the setting? All right, here we go. All right, I've blocked 1,245 people, and I've muted 861, which is shockingly low. Because
so roughly
most
2,000.
of you all deserve to be muted.
Roughly 2,000 that you've muted or blocked. I'm going to say that
a lot of people that I blocked like 50 times. They think they're getting one up on me by like creating a new account, not thinking that I'm going to realize it's them. But I not only realize it's them, but I even know their MO and their name.
All right, I'm going to say
Dan Offerdahl.
I'm going to say that you add 75 during this series.
Yeah, probably. Actually, it hasn't been a lot lately because I don't look at my mentions nearly as much since the whole tweet deck has pretty much disappeared.
It is an interesting dynamic. The pleasure that some people seem to take in throwing an insult towards you on Twitter it does make you wonder. Like, imagine that guy being a father and like, son, let me tell you how you do this.
Yeah.
You set up an account, you call yourself some name that nobody knows who you are. Let's just call yourself Hockey Expert 44. And when your team gets down 1-0, nothing makes you feel better than saying, this team sucks. This guy should get fired. This guy's pathetic. This guy doesn't care. This guy doesn't work. And then if like the TV announcer has the gall to say that the team has more shots than the opponent, call him a moron, call him a homer. If the writer happens to say, hey, I didn't disagree with this decision, call him every name in the book. And boy, do you feel good when you get done with that. I mean, like, if I ever said something like that or posted something like that, I'd be embarrassed that one of my kids might read it and say, Dad, this is what you just said about this guy?
Yeah.
That you don't even know, that you've never met? This is what you just said about Billy Guerin? Like, you actually think you know more hockey than Billy Guerin?
Everybody listening to this, go into your account and look at the crap that you write about John Merrill. Like, like it's just disgusting, man.
But like the people who make these decisions, just imagine sitting there and justifying and saying like, yep, I know more about building a game plan, setting up a forecheck, diagramming a penalty kill than John Hines, or I know more about whatever aspect of the game it is. I just can't, I can't imagine having like my friends and family see a comment made by me about something like that. It would, I'd be embarrassed.
It's a crazy phenomenon, and it's a lot of us. All right. Mike Wheeler, Middleton didn't seem healthy. Any concerns there? He definitely didn't seem healthy. He didn't look good in the Islander game too, the one he got hurt in. So that's 2 games in a row now. At least he got a game in before the playoffs to try to maybe get the gremlins out of his game. But I would agree with the Mike.
Yeah, I don't know about healthy,
Jake didn't look great.
He didn't look sharp.
Yeah.
And now he's been at his best when playing with Jared Spurgeon. So Spurgeon's had the ability to kind of tug him along. Now you've got a chance where it's 4 days off before you play again. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are all off days. So it's a great chance to still, even though you got to practice, it'll be a chance to get rested a little bit, get recharged. The Wild need him. I mean, if they're going to win this series, the top 4 defensemen have to be terrific.
Alex Pierce, and we haven't really discussed it, but what are the key matchups against Vegas? What are the primary areas in which the Wild need to have success to compete in this series? It's a great question. I mean, you're talking about Stone and Eichel, who are 2 of the best players in the league, 2-way guys. Thomas Hertl, who's just an awesome offensive force, gigantic. They've got a lot of size up front. They've got Worf, they've got a lot of like depth scoring. Their blue lines, as you and I have talked about many times,
I think it's number 1 in the league.
Yep. And then they got Aiden Hill playing well. It's a lot to handle.
Well, I started to dig into some of the numbers, and it's a tough matchup. Vegas is the favorite for sure. They've earned it. They've earned the home ice in the series. They won their division. The Wild are just 2-9-2 in their last 13 games against Vegas, have been outscored by 19 goals over that stretch. I think there's 2 areas where the Wild, now this year they've lost all 3, but Kirill Kaprizov only played 1 of the 3, scored 2 goals incidentally in that game. Eriksson Ek only played 1 of the 3. That's the matchup. Eriksson Ek, Eichel had a hat trick last time these teams played, and they played in St. Paul. When they play in St. Paul in this series, there aren't going to be any Jack Eichel hat tricks if he's playing against Jules Eriksson Ek all night. So that's matchup number 1. Number 2, I think the special teams have to be good, because 5-on-5, I'd say Vegas is the deeper club. They're probably going to have the upper hand there. It might be slight, but likely to have the upper hand. The Wild have to be able to cash in on the special teams. And the penalty kill, I know, has been something we've talked about a lot over the course of the year. And over the year, it hasn't been great. It's been better down the stretch. Penalty kill has to be good, but they have to take advantage when they get power play chances. I don't think there will be a ton of power play chances in this series, but when you get them, they have to cash in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I agree with you on all that. Like, I just feel like, look, this is going to be tough. It's doable, but it's going to be tough. It was always pick your poison. Speaking of which, somebody asked, Anthony, are you more excited that they're going to Vegas, or you're more excited that you won't have to hear Russo bitch about Winnipeg?
A little bit of both. I'd say I have an excitement level for sure. I love going to Vegas, and I think the Wild match up a little bit better with Vegas than they do with Winnipeg. But yes, there is definitely an added bonus and I usually have a pretty good ability to just tune you out when you're complaining about something, but it would be nice not to have to tune you out.
Yeah. I think we've heard you whine about what it was like to be at the Shark Club last year and how you'd never go there again. So was that last year? That was with you. Yeah, that was last year. It was the game after the Vancouver game. Because Dylan Laux was there too.
That's right.
And
Chris Johnson,
I don't think I'm the only one that doesn't love going there.
Oh, no, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not a big Winnipeg fan, although it is a better city in the spring than it is in the winter.
Yeah.
I spent some time up there in the summer back when I was covering the St. Paul Saints, and it's a much better city in the summertime. And there are a couple spots there that I don't mind. The Shark Club is not one of them. I won't be going back there. That I can't even remember why we ended up there. It must have been your recommendation.
Yeah. Do you any playoff series that you're really looking forward to, or you think there could be an upset? I mean, the way Washington's playing right now, like, I can't believe that they'd be too excited to play Montreal. Ottawa, Toronto is going to be unbelievable.
I think there's just some great rivalry
Tampa,
series.
Florida, Carolina, Jersey.
Right.
Tampa, I think, is going to win.
I agree, but it depends on if Florida is anywhere close to being Florida. They haven't really been the same
They've
since
had
Kachuk
so many
went
injuries,
out. But think about those rivalries. Tampa against Florida. The Ottawa-Toronto series, I think, is going to be terrific. Then you throw in the Dallas-Colorado series with Landeskog potentially coming back, Rantanen playing for the other side, in addition to the fact that they're probably two of the 6 best teams in the NHL. I just don't think, I mean, even St. Louis and Winnipeg is a series that has intrigue. I think there's so many in this first round. I don't necessarily think Washington's afraid of Montreal. I watched Montreal play Chicago the other night. I'm not certain that they're going to find a way to win their last game. They've got to play Carolina, and it wouldn't shock me if Columbus sneaks into that final spot. Which,
boy, that'd be something.
It would be something. I'd be really happy for Dean Evison. I think he's done such a good job keeping that team afloat, and here they are going into the last game with a chance to get in the playoffs.
Zach asks, are the Wild releasing a 25th year anniversary jersey next year? Yes. That is the answer there. I can't give you much more than that. Somebody wants to know what you would shoot at Augusta.
We've had a couple conversations about this with some golf buddies of mine, and one of the questions was, how big a lead would you have to be handed going into the last round to win? And I said that I thought I'd have to have at least a 28 shot lead, maybe 36, because it wouldn't be under 100. There's almost no way. So we were having a lot of these discussions. What if you got to start with your ball the furthest point from the pin on every green? Could you win there? And we were going back and forth. I was like, yeah, if you average a 3-putt, that means you're 18 under par, and you're going to win with that. But I don't know. I would love to play it someday, but I can't imagine a scenario where I'd be underneath 100.
Yep. Luke Witt asks, what are some of the roster changes that Billy Guerin could make for the Olympics? I would think that Chris Kreider would be out. And you get an extra. So there's right there too. I would think that Tage Thompson and Clayton Keller would have a real good chance to make it from that standpoint. I think Adam Fox is the one guy that probably is really in trouble from that standpoint on the blue line. I don't know who you go with. I mean, there's John Carlson, there's Neil Pionk, there's Luke Hudson, probably Luke, or even
Lane
maybe
Hudson.
Azeem Buium. Yeah. Lane. Did I say Luke?
Yeah, Lane Hudson.
So
he's going to win the Calder, don't you think? So I think
he's got my vote. Next week we'll do our awards. Karsten asks, why use a year of Zeev's contract if they won't play? I mean, it's just the price of doing business. You don't want to risk him just going back to college. They want him out, and that's why.
Yeah, we should add to that didn't matter if he played or not. The year was burned when he signed the contract.
Yeah, exactly. But some people. Sam asks, with how good we've been on the road this season, is there a sense of comfort in going on the road first? Aren't the Wild 4 for 4 when they start as a lower seed or something? I've been reading that lately. In the playoffs,
when they started,
I don't know. It was weird NHL stat. They let me see if I have it written. So the NHL put out yesterday, the Wild clinched a playoff berth in the 14th season. Tied for Minnesota is one of 4 franchises in NHL history with a perfect series winning percentage in rounds where it was the lower seeded team. 4 for 4. Does that make possible? Is that even possible?
No.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
It's
the others are Columbus.
Impossible.
Yeah.
If you mean lower as being the better seed, that's false, because they lost to St. Louis a couple of years ago as the better seed. And if there's
this is saying Minnesota is one of 4 franchises in NHL history with a perfect series percentage of 4 for 4 in rounds where it was the lower seeded team. That's
impossible.
Yeah, that's impossible. I don't even know how that. Glad I didn't just throw that out there. That's in the NHL.
Well, they've only won 4 playoff series in their history, and they were the lower seed in the 2 in 03, but then they were also the higher seed against the Ducks in the final, but then they were the lower seed in the series that they won they were the lower seed when they won against St. Louis and Chicago or Colorado, but they were also the lower seed against
that makes no
Chicago
sense.
in the second round.
Unless they're saying first round, but
they've been the lower seed.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
A lot.
Yeah. All right. Last question. I saw it. I liked it, and it's missing. Where is it? There we go. Oh, best restaurants in Vegas. Michael Scott wants to know. All right. So I have a reservation Friday night at Golden Steer, which I hear is incredible. I've been to Urban Rye, which I've been trying to get you to come with me once. We should do that like Monday night.
Somebody
or something.
texted that place.
It's so
to me.
good.
The two that stand out to me that I really have enjoyed steak places were Smith and Walensky and Bavette's.
Okay.
Those were
Smith
the
and
two.
Walensky's gone, right?
I think I don't know. It's been a couple of years, but Bavette's I love.
What about I've heard that one's awesome because I've been to the Bavette's in New York, I think.
I know there's one in Chicago.
Yeah, and they have one in New York that's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't been to that one.
What about Italian? Because there's not a lot of great that we've found.
There's not. I love leaving the Strip and going out to the little Goomba Italian place out to what's the name of the place?
Is Goomba allowed, or are you going to get us canceled?
Yeah, no, I'm Italian. I can say it.
Yeah,
it's I can call myself a wop, I suppose, if I wanted to. It's out at it's where the Santa Fe Cats and the Fat City Horns play, and it's off the Strip. But there's a little Sinatra piano bar type Italian place that I really like. It's just for atmosphere. It's not, the food's nothing spectacular. It's your basic red sauce stuff, but I love going there just for the ambiance.
All right, cool. Well, hang on, I'm texting our producer.
Tell him to just do some kind of Google search and see if it's okay to say Goomba.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to our awesome sponsors. April 24th is our next live show. That's Thursday night, 7 p.m. at Elsie's. Really excited about that. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems. And as we know, you were joining us at the Aquarius Home Services studio. Clamshell Beach Resorts, Giggly THC Beverages, Onyx Maps, Twill and the Edina Galleria, and Royal Credit Union. Talk to you next week at Elsie's, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive.